As the studio lights dimmed, Senator John Kennedy's voice, thick with a Louisiana drawl but sharp as a razor's edge, cut through the tense silence. Miss Winfrey called me heartless on her show today, he said, his eyes fixed on the camera. Now, America is going to hear from the people who have to pay the price for her brand of heart. He held up a single folded piece of paper. No, we're not cutting to commercial. We're not done here. The day had begun under the warm, forgiving glow of a California television studio. Oprah Winfrey, a titan of media whose voice could launch movements and create bestsellers overnight, sat across from a panel of social commentators. The set was pristine, bathed in soft, optimistic light. Her audience, a sea of adoring faces, hung on her every word. The topic was criminal justice reform, and Oprah was in her element, speaking with the serene confidence of a person who has never been told they are wrong. We have to evolve, she said, her voice a smooth, persuasive melody. We have to look at the root causes, the desperation that leads to crime. It's about empathy. It's about compassion. She then leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of disappointed pity. But you still have politicians, like Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, who give these folksy speeches about a law and order. She let out a soft, dismissive laugh. The audience chuckled along with her. It's easy to do. It's a simplistic, cruel rhetoric that gets a cheap round of applause, but it completely ignores the soul of the problem. It lacks empathy. It lacks vision. And frankly, she concluded, her eyes finding the camera, it lacks a heart. The clip went nuclear. Within the hour, it was the #1 trending topic online. News networks played it on a loop. Pundits debated. For half the country, Oprah had spoken a profound truth. For the other half, she had revealed an arrogant disdain for the concerns of everyday people. The narrative was set. Oprah, the enlightened empath, versus Kennedy, the heartless populist. By late afternoon, Senator Kennedy's office confirmed he would appear on The National Report, a primetime news program hosted by Sarah Jennings, a journalist known for her unflinching neutrality. The stage was set for a political duel. That evening, the studio for The National Report was the antithesis of Oprah's. Cool blue lights, polished dark wood, a feeling of gravitas and consequence. The live studio audience was quiet, a mix of politically engaged citizens who understood the weight of the moment. Sarah Jennings began, her voice calm and direct. Senator Kennedy, thank you for being here on such short notice. Earlier today, Oprah Winfrey had some very strong words for you and your stance on crime. We are going to play that clip now. The giant screen behind them lit up with Oprah's face. The studio audience watched in silence as her words filled the space. Simplistic, cruel rhetoric. Lacks a heart. When the clip ended, the screen went dark, and all eyes turned to the senator from Louisiana. Kennedy didn't speak immediately. He just nodded slowly, as if he were letting the words soak into the floorboards. Sarah, expecting a fiery rebuttal, leaned forward. Senator, your response. He finally looked up, not at Sarah, but directly into the main camera, as if trying to make eye contact with every single person watching at home. Well, Sarah, he began, his voice deceptively calm. First, I want to thank Miss Winfrey. She has more power in her little finger than I have in my whole body. When she talks, people listen. And she's right about one thing. We should talk about the heart. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. There's a big difference between talking about suffering from a beautiful studio in California and living with the consequences of it on a Tuesday night in Baton Rouge, he continued. The first ripple of applause, small but sharp, came from the audience. Miss Winfrey talks about her vision. Kennedy said, his voice starting to build. I want to talk about a young man from my state. He had a vision too. His vision was to graduate high school with honors, to play college football, to become an engineer, and buy his mom a house so she wouldn't have to work two jobs anymore. He reached into his jacket pocket, not with a flourish, but with a quiet reverence. He pulled out a slightly creased, wallet-sized photograph. It was a school picture. This, he said, holding it up for the camera to capture, is David. David Renault, 17 years old. The control room zoomed in on the photo. A handsome kid with a wide, hopeful smile, wearing his high school football jersey. In the live studio audience, a woman in the second row let out an involuntary gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. The air grew heavy. This was no longer a political debate. David was working his shift at a gas station 3 months ago, Kennedy said, his voice now low and tight with emotion. He was studying for his calculus exam behind the counter. He didn't even see it coming. Sarah Jennings was completely still, her professional composure cracking. The audience was frozen. A man walked in, demanded the money from the register, and then shot him twice. David died on the floor, his textbook open next to him. A quiet sob could be heard from the audience. A man in a suit took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. The raw, human tragedy was washing over the sterile political environment, and it was devastating. The man who killed him, Kennedy's voice dropped to a near whisper, was out on early release, released as part of a compassionate reform initiative, a bill that was publicly praised and promoted by a number of influential celebrities, including Miss Winfrey herself, who called it a model for the nation. The emotional avalanche was gaining speed, becoming an unstoppable force. He had laid the groundwork. He had shown them the face of the victim. Now, he revealed the cause. He placed the photograph carefully on the desk in front of him and reached back into his pocket. He pulled out the folded, worn piece of paper. Its edges were soft, and the ink was slightly blurred in places. A few weeks ago, I got a letter, he said, his voice thick. It's from David's mother, Maria. She asked me to be his voice. He unfolded the paper, his hands trembling slightly. I'm not going to read all of it, he said, his eyes scanning the page. It's not for a television show, but she wants people to know. He took a deep breath. Asterisk, dear Senator. He began reading. Asterisk, they talk about second chances. My son doesn't get a second chance. His killer had 3 felony convictions before this. 3 other families, 3 other chances. When does my son's chance matter? They say the man who did this had a hard life. My David was working to make his life better. We didn't have much, but we had that. Now we have nothing. Please, sir, don't let them forget my boy. Don't let them say his life was less important than his killer's freedom. He stopped reading, unable to continue for a moment. The studio was utterly silent. All artifice had been stripped away. There were no Republicans or Democrats in that room anymore. There were only human beings, confronted with a mother's primal scream of grief. Sarah Jennings had tears openly streaming down her face. The camera panned across the audience, capturing faces etched with shock and sorrow. This was the weaponization of truth, the deployment of pure, unassailable human pain. Kennedy folded the letter slowly, deliberately. He looked back into the camera, his expression one of profound, righteous anger. This was the moment, the mic drop. With all due respect, Miss Winfrey, he said, his voice now ringing with clarity and moral authority. Your empathy is a theory discussed from a studio in California. This letter, this is the receipt for those theories, paid for by a family in my state. The words landed like thunder. My job isn't to have vision. My job is to listen to the mothers who have to bury their children. And I will not, for 1 second, apologize for having a heart that breaks for David Reno and his family before it breaks for the man who put 2 bullets in him. For a full 5 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, a single person in the audience began to clap. Another joined, then another, and within moments, the entire studio erupted into a deafening, sustained standing ovation. It wasn't polite applause. It was a raw, emotional roar of approval and catharsis. They weren't clapping for a politician. They were clapping for a father, a son, a mother, for the simple, brutal truth that had just been laid bare for the world to see. Sarah Jennings, trying to regain her composure, simply shook her head, whispering, We, we have to take a break. But nobody was listening. John Kennedy sat there, not smiling, not basking in the applause, but with a look of grim vindication. The mother's tear-stained letter resting on the desk in front of him like a sacred text. The debate was over. He had won. What did you find to be the most powerful moment in Senator Kennedy's response? The photograph of the victim, the mother's letter, or his final blistering statement? Share your perspective in the comments below. For more stories that uncover the truth behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to our channel.